So welcome everyone. I'm Amy Shaw with the Greater Binghamton Chamber of Commerce. I know we actually have some college interns joining us for this program today. So glad you guys could be part of this. Please feel free to put anything in the chat, any questions or comments. So first I want to introduce our CEOs, and I'll have each of them give a brief bio. So it's Inside the C-Suite Habit 5 today, which is think, seek first to understand, then be understood. Hopefully I got that right, Mary.
You're right.
So let's see, we have Joe Hashey, who's the president and founder of Synergy Athletics. And we also have Jeff Lake, the regional president of NBT Bank. So why don't we start with Joe? Why don't you give us a brief bio?
Sure. Thanks so much, Amy. Honored to be on with everyone and with Jeff and you and Mary. So I've been through this area, grew up here my whole life, went to Seton Catholic. My mom was a teacher over at St. Joe's across the street where we grew up from. That's where we would walk to school each morning. I had my mom as a teacher and went up through that. And I enjoyed it. And I became an educator myself and had the opportunity to actually work with Mary over at Vestal, where I was a high school U.S. history and economics teacher for 8 years. And during that time, I started a passion project, a company out of my garage. So my wife and I bought a duplex. We were very fiscally conservative. We rented out the other half. We started this little business in the basement, and we called it Synergy Athletics. And we've been fortunate enough to grow it now to 3 locations over the last decade. And we started a consulting business on the side where I help gym owners expand from there. That's where I've been the last 2 days down in New Jersey, helping run that mastermind. And we started a real estate investing company as well. So we're trying to expand and just trying to learn as much as I can through the process of entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Joe. How about you, Jeff?
Thanks, Amy, and thanks very much for asking me here today. I grew up on the west side of Binghamton, where I still live. I am a graduate of Binghamton Central High School. Went away to college for a couple of years and then came home in the early 80s to what I thought was, my IBM job, which I thought was my birthright at that time. I don't know if everybody remembers that time, but actually I ended up working as a teller at the Binghamton Savings Bank downtown and spent the first summer there. And shortly after got into the management training program at what was then First City Bank over on 2 Court Street, across from what is now, God help me, Al Boscov's, across the street from Boscov, right? I spent 20 years there in what was First City Bank, then Lincoln Bank, then Chase Bank, then Chase was bought by Chemical, and then they had JP Morgan Chase. And so I basically worked for a community bank, a regional bank, a super regional bank, a national bank, an international bank, and an investment bank. And I parked my car in the same spot every day. But I went through it as it grew. I spent 20 years there. And then in 2001, NBT approached me saying they wanted to become a player in the Binghamton area. And they'd like to, we had 1 branch there already. And he said, we'd like to build a region. Would you like the keys? And I said, that would be great. I know an awful lot of folks around town. I know the people who I want to call. And so for the last 20 years, I've been involved with NBT here in town.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's always interesting to kind of pair the entrepreneur with the more corporate CEOs. So they always bring different perspectives. So I am going to introduce our facilitator, Mary Surdy. We've had the pleasure of having Mary. This will be month 5 with 2 more sessions to go. So Mary M. Surdy is a dedicated award-winning leadership consultant with 40+ years of experience in administrative, educational, and business expertise. She specializes in human capitalization, strategic planning, staff development, teaching and learning, and personnel and project management. Mary has served in administration in multiple school districts and as a mentor, coach, teacher at all levels, K through 12, and college instructor. Locally, Mary serves on several nonprofit boards and is an active member of Binghamton Rotary And nationally, she has served as a consultant and trainer for Franklin Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People since 2002. And she is a proud graduate of the Chamber's Leadership Program, BLI. So I am going to turn the program over to you, Mary.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Joe and Jeff and all our virtual participants this morning. So we're excited to be offering the 5th part, as Amy said, of our conversations with local CEOs around Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And we're interested this morning to hear what Joe and Jeff what impact the 7 habits, and particularly habit 5, has had on their organizations and their personal life also. So today's participants, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Amy will monitor that and we'll get you involved. So we're going to start out with a quick slide and a review. And for those of you who are new to our series, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was written in 1989, and it continues to be one of the 25 most influential business management books. Stephen Covey's premise is that character and principles are crucial, not only for effective living, but for great leadership. During the spring months, we discussed habits 1, 2, and 3. And Amy, if you want to flip that slide, that would be great. Habits 1, 2, and 3 really centered around self-mastery, inner strength, character based on timeless principles, a purposeful life, and values shown in how we manage our time and what legacy we leave. Last month, we moved to the public victory, habit 4, of building effective relationships with others, and win-win thinking, and trust in organizations. Habit 4 was think win-win. So before I move to habit 5 this morning, I'd like Jeff and Joe, could you give us a couple of examples of how you've built relationships in your organization using win-win thinking and trust and creating trust? Joe, would you like to start this morning?
Absolutely, because my example actually has to do with Jeff and NBT. So I've been fortunate to know a lot of community members through serving them at our business, since we see a lot of people in and out of the doors. And one of them was a gentleman named Mike Chewins that his son was attending. I believe his son's a Binghamton police officer now, but he was attending one of our facilities, and I knew Mike was in banking, and I knew that I knew nothing about banking and finance. I'm trying to figure out going from a teacher to an entrepreneur. And I just asked Mike for some help. I believe he was the CFO of NBT at the time. And I'm like a small garage gym owner with like 5 clients. And he took the time to sit down at lunch and like explain so much to me that it gave me not only the knowledge, but the confidence that there are so many good people in the area that are willing to share the information. I've met a lot of other people along the way since that time. Some have been on this. Kevin Blake was one of them, another member who I think this is a Dale Carnegie thing. You find successful people and you take them out to lunch and you let them talk. And that was kind of the learning process for like 5 years. And there's a lot of those type of people in the area that are willing to do it. So that's been a huge influence on how I've been able to grow this company and do my own personal development.
Great, thank you. Jeff, how about you? How do you build trust in your organization?
Thanks, Mary. And I think I can take this from either a managerial dealing with employees or clients, frankly. The idea, in my opinion, is to approach the relationship wanting to learn before wanting to sell. And that's probably the hardest thing that a salesperson does. Someone that's out there wanting to promote the bank wants to go out and tell people what's so great about them. And instead, if you're trying to build a trust and build a relationship, the first thing you do is ask and make sure that you're not the first person talking, and say, what is it that you'd like to, what's important to you in a banking relationship? What's important to you? And it's very often not what you were ready to pitch, maybe not, or not ready to pitch first. And I think that by showing whether you're dealing with an employee with an issue or a customer with an issue, that you ask the question first and ask, what is it that I can do for you? And then when you tailor it that way. And I believe that that starts to build the trust because the person on the other end believes they're being listened to, that their opinion is important, that their needs are important to you. And then of course you got to deliver, deliver an answer, whether it's the one they want to hear or not, in a gentle, professional way. And then I believe that through the good and the bad, the relationship starts to be developed, that you're there for them through thick and thin. And when you're talking about someone's financial business, that's the most important thing they could feel from.
Great. Thanks to both of you. Nice segue into habit 5 this morning. Habit 5 is seek first to understand, then be understood. And Stephen Covey says, next to physical survival, the greatest human need of a human being is to be understood, to be affirmed, and to be appreciated. And truly the best way to understand another person is to listen to them. Listen to the sounds and the words, but more importantly, listen with your eyes and your heart for feeling and meaning. Most of the time, we listen through our own paradigm, our own self. We hear other people's messages through our own experience and our motives, instead of really listening to understand the other person. Sometimes we get ready to advise, we counsel, we probe, we ask questions, we interpret, we explain, we evaluate, we judge. And worse yet, we might actually ignore or pretend listen or selectively listen. So to my CEOs this morning, could you describe a time when someone didn't listen to you? They might have jumped ahead and began giving you advice or agreeing or disagreeing. And how did you feel about that? A time when you were not listened to? Jeff, you want to start that one?
Yeah, I can lead off. I've had experiences where folks within an organization that I may be involved with are so eager to help out our line of business, let's say, those of us who are out on the street helping, that we are often presented with services or practices or answers. Here's what we've rolled out for you guys, and this is what's going to make your job easier. And we'll look around the table and say, this isn't necessarily what we need. And it's because exactly what I was saying before, in someone's haste to help you out, they forgot to ask you what you needed. I've done it myself because of the folks that I manage are doing a job that I did for most of my career. So obviously I know how to do it better than they do. So yeah. I'll come out with something and tell me, how about this and this and this? And the answer is that it's not really what we were looking for. So it happens very often, and it makes you feel like it's not like the relationship's not a two-way street. Mm-hmm.
Great.
That's the best way.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Joe, how about a time when you weren't listened to, whether, personal or professional example here?
I've been thinking about this question a lot since you gave it to us last week, and it happens a lot. And I know I am guilty of doing it a lot, where someone's talking to me and I feel like I have the answer. So I just wait for them to finish talking so I can just say the answer, but I miss the last part of what they were saying and I screw it up. So certainly hold myself accountable for that one. And this is intentionally heavily redacted because I never like to point any fingers at organizations or anything like that. But at the beginning of the pandemic, where we all went into just everyone was in different things going on. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of people dealing with health issues that became very serious, and death in families and things. And after a few months, I reached out to our organization that my kids were a part of and said, hey, maybe we can try doing X, Y, and Z because I want to get the kids active. And I wrote a pretty substantial, like, hey, there's some cool things we can do, try to come up with some ideas. And they basically responded with, why aren't you staying at home enjoying time with your family right now? And I didn't feel listened to at all, because right now I'm trying to keep 6, 7 employees with jobs. We're trying to keep a company afloat, and I was reaching out for help to try to find something positive for my kids, and I don't think they heard what I was saying. And a very good organization overall, but I that really, I take my job as a dad much more serious than I take my job as a company owner. And we had to, based on our family core values, remove our kids from that organization and move along. But it was because it was just a simple customer service thing that could have been, I think, understood. And I get it. There's so much going on, but it was something that it really stayed with me. Like, just as a self-reflection, I have to make sure I don't do that to anyone. Like, I probably have too.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Joe. And I think the past year and a half with the pandemic, it's presented us with opportunities to really practice the 7 habits, and particularly this one, seek first to truly understand, then be understood. So my next slide, and this is a simple slide, but it's powerful. If you take the word listen and you scramble the letters, you get the word silent. And I'd like just to relate a little story here. Billionaire investor Mark Cuban recently said in an April interview, "I got this job out of college when I was 22, and it didn't last very long, and they didn't like me very much." Cuban said a mentor of his noticed his talkative nature and encouraged him to listen more, especially during work meetings. Cuban says, "This guy was trying to be my mentor, and he said, I'm going to give you a tool you can use. Every time you go into a meeting, Mark, I want you to have a notepad. And the minute you sit down, I want you to write the word listen on your notepad. You need this, Mark, because you don't listen." And since then, the habit has stuck with me. No lie, Cuban said. If you go back over the last 40 years, now every time I go into a meeting, I write the word listen first thing. So to Jeff and to Joe, listening is very important, but it's often like a neglected part of communication, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Can you share with us any strategies for listening that you've picked up and you use in your organization or your personal life? And so how have you become a better listener? And can you share with the audience any strategies for that? Let's start with Joe.
I was worried about that. All right.
I know you
No,
are.
just kidding. I like this one a lot because I am naturally very introverted. Like, if you could see my legs right now, they're all like twitching up and down because I get nervous in situations like this and get very fiddling around and stuff. So it like really has a profound effect on me when I listen, and I always pair it with like breathing, trying to slow something down, like taking a breath before I reply to make sure that they've completed everything. It's from teaching, and this is one of my worst parts is teaching, like listening time. You ask a question and I get so antsy, like I want the kids to answer it, and you just don't let them process it and think it and get out coherent answers. So I actually picked it up from teaching, like having to take like 3 slow breaths before I respond. And often it helps the person process in our leadership meetings at our staff, and then add something to what they were saying, or they can take a breath themselves and think about what they just said reflectively and give a more complete answer. So it's a work in progress, but I always like to pair taking a couple breaths with my ability to listen before I respond.
Great, thanks, Joe. And as an educator, we know that wait time for students really should be almost 7 to 10 seconds. That's a long time.
It's forever.
It's forever. But that's a great strategy, pairing it with breathing. I like that. Thank you for sharing. Jeff, how about anything that you've picked up along the way on listening?
Sure. And as opposed to Joe, I consider myself probably a natural extrovert who normally wants to get in and start pitching all the time and talking about what I'm there to talk about. And I got thinking about this afterward, after we spoke again last week, that I had let's say a Cuban-like, I don't compare myself to Mark Cuban, but I had an experience much like his when I was early in my career, when one of my mentors, a guy named Gary Pierce, who I thought very, very highly of, said something to me where he said, well, just remember, there's a reason why you have 2 ears and only 1 mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking that was kind of corny and of course, and yeah, I get it. But, here I am 30 years later repeating it back to you because it stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it stayed with me that you should be listening first and talking second. And so I have taken that into whenever I'm meeting with either employees or clients, to the very simple strategy of make sure you're not the first one talking. Let them start and take the conversation where it needs to go, and that's where you'll learn, and you'll be able to tailor your response to what the other individual is asking you for.
Great, nice strategy there, Jeff, that let the other person speak first. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
It's also very difficult.
It is difficult. This is a hard habit. There's a skill involved, but it's also an attitude. I'm going to take this to a higher level. And if Amy, you want to put up the next slide, it's called empathic listening. And this is the highest level of listening. It gets beyond your personal motives and trying to discover what the other person really means and feels from his or her point of view. And as I said, it's both a skill and an attitude, and I truly want to understand others, and I can get better at it. I can get better at this. So empathic listening is vital under certain conditions, when emotions are strong. And I think, Joe, you spoke to this last week when we were chatting about, putting some time in there when emotions get high. It's also good to use empathic listening when there's low trust, when we're not sure if we understand, when the data's complex and unfamiliar, and we're not sure the other person really feels understood. So my question to our CEOs here is, practicing empathy and empathic listening sounds like a good idea, but in reality, can it take way too long? And don't you have to give up control just to listen? You've got to give up that power and that control of leading the group or the organization. Jeff, thoughts about that?
Wow. This is kind of a complex concept, but there are a few things that come to mind. The first is that you need to know what you're discussing before you go into the meeting, and recognize that you've got to give the subject ample time, depending on what you're talking about. I mean, that's the beginning point. But as far as giving up control, I think there's a difference between giving up control and giving up the speaker role. I think that those who, when you're driving a meeting, or driving being, let's say you're the senior person there, or it's your meeting, let's say, it's essential to give people the opportunity to fully explain. But when the emotions start to step up, that's when you can step in and guide without the person who's expressing their frustration, let's say. You can step in and keep it within the rails, let's say. That's the biggest challenge. So I don't think that's giving up control. It is your responsibility to keep things within the rail, but yet to listen and to try to put it back to them in a way that's a little calmer, I guess.
Yeah, great. So I like your use of the words, Jeff. You're going to help guide it so that emotion doesn't go off the rails. I like that is a responsibility of being a leader also. We're going to talk in a few minutes about some strategies to do that. Some skill words. Joe, how about you? What do you think about this whole concept of empathy and empathic listening? And, doesn't it take a lot of time just to step back and give the other person the space they need?
I think this is the most important piece of the whole puzzle. I think if you're listening empathically, it lets people get their full thoughts out. So we think about it at 3 different levels, because one of our company's core values is meet people where they're at. So this one's really important to us to take seriously. So we spend time teaching it to staff. So on the first level, if it's someone you don't know and they're telling you something, you want to make sure you reiterate it using the exact words that they used. And this is something we learned a lot in the fitness industry. So if someone says, I'm frustrated that I haven't I just moved to the area. I'm frustrated that I haven't been able to lose weight at this other place that I used to live. And if I say, oh, I hear that you're angry about losing weight, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. And like, you have to be intentional, and that actually focuses your listening better if you're listening for the words that they're actually using, so you can say them back, because it creates friction in their mind otherwise, that you're not empathically listening, you're just trying to give them the answer. So using the verbiage to someone you don't know is critical. Internally, we do have rules that govern our meetings, our leadership team, and something like that. One of our rules is always be aware of your heart rate. Like Jeff was just talking about guiding emotions. That's the rule we use. Like, if you feel your heart rate starting beating real fast and you get a little red in the face, like, let's take a minute. Let's remove ourselves from the situation, get a cup of water. Like, we talk very passionately about a lot of things because our staff is very passionate about serving people, and they'll get fired up about something and say, all right, well, let's, be aware of our heart rate. Let's get out our thoughts more thoroughly and completely. So that way, like, when my heart rate gets up, I'm not a great communicator. Like, I'll get red in the face. My ears shut down and my mouth keeps flapping, and I don't do a great job with it. So the coaching cue is like, all right, let's be aware of our heart rate. It's a tactic that we use. Like, lowest heart rate in the room gets heard the most clear. And so they take it to heart. And on the third level, and I think this is a Brene Brown thing, is that if I didn't hear exactly what they said, and it's not someone on the team, I'll use the phrase, the story I'm telling myself. So let's say it is someone on the team, and they didn't get something done. I'll say, the story I'm telling myself is you weren't able to complete X, Y, and Z project because perhaps you didn't have the support or the background knowledge to be successful at that. Is that true? And they'll say, well, yes. Or, no, what I really needed was more time. It was my capacity that was an issue. So I'm not accusing of anything. I am looking for the answer to this story. We're removing emotions and we're having a discussion about it the way that phrase is. And I love that one. I think I want to credit the right person, but it's from Brene Brown's book. And all three of those levels have been really important. And we teach them with our staff, because empathetic listening, again, I think is the most important piece of this.
So Joe, what I'm hearing you say is you actually spend time helping your staff grow and learn in this area. And you've got some strategies, the one where the person who has the lowest heart rate or is in check, they will be heard and understood. And I like what you said about, if I start to feel worked up or the red in the face, let's pause. Let's put some time and space in there and pull ourselves back together and get control of our emotions so that we can deal with each other logically, rationally, and with empathy.
That was a good example yourself, Mary. You started with what I heard you say was,
Yeah.
and then you see, I
Yeah.
see some listeners nodding like they're picking it
got
up.
Yeah.
I would love, Joe, I know it's not necessarily related to this habit, but I think that anyone in business is looking for ways to be more effective in meetings. And I know you referenced one thing that you with the heart rate, but where did those strategies of meetings, where did that inspiration come from? And what are some other ones that, people might be able to implement?
Well, the first thing is wearing t-shirts all the time. Super comfortable. Everyone's more relaxed. Sorry, Jeff, I know that's not allowed. No, there is a bunch of meeting rules that we use, and I believe they come from Patrick Lencioni's book, Death by Meeting. We adapted them for our own use, but I think it goes back to Jeff's point about putting guardrails around the discussion. So ours, we have a way that we are expected to communicate within during these rules. So everyone kind of agrees to the rules and understands them and can communicate by them. So we're just not guessing and going willy-nilly. Some of them include, we'll be decisive, and that keeps us from kicking the can down the road. Oh, well, maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we won't. We have another one. Those will choose short-term pain and suffering. So if there's a tough decision, we're just going to make it now. That's the rule. We have to live by it. We'll be aware of our heart rate. We're not going to rule by consensus or secondhand information. So we come up with these guidelines to make sure that we're all communicating and being understood up front. like Jeff said, with those guardrails, I think it's really important for when you're setting up meeting structures. It's just like playing a sport or doing anything, teaching a class. Like there's certain guidelines you have, but we go into meetings without those guidelines, and it's just a free for all sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the ones that I know that you had shared them with me, but I love the one about either you live with it, you end it, or you change it. Right? I think those are, when you're, having a discussion about a sensitive topic or issue going on, I like the decisiveness of those choices.
Yeah, that's one we have to remind ourselves of all the time, because it's human instinct to kind of push problems down the road. Because we want to be nice and everything, and say, all right, well, this isn't going so well. And at the end of the meeting, are we going to live with it? Are we accepting this, or are we going to change it or try to solve it? And we have to admit that we're choosing one of those. A lot of times we defer to not solving it and just assume it'll go away. But by that, we are accepting living with that problem within our company or organization. And so we have to have that conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing, both of you. Amy, my next slide has some skills here for people. Empathic listening gives other people that psychological space, an open space where people can explore their own feelings and emotions, and they can feel understood without being judged. Now, empathic listening is not agreeing with the other person, but it's putting that space in there to give the other person time to almost work it out themselves. So when we listen empathically, we should look at those nonverbal cues. And the one that's been obvious this morning is when somebody's face starts to get red and you can feel the emotion. Also, listen attentively. How many times have you been in a room with someone and they're checking their cell phone? They're checking their watch to see what time it is, and you have not felt that you're really being listened to. So lean into a speaker, put your cell phone down, and give a person your full attention. Another strategy, and Joe said this nicely, was repeat the speaker's content word for word the first time through. If a person says, I'm feeling frustrated, don't change it into I'm feeling angry. So repeat their words verbatim. Once the trust is built, then you can rephrase it and move a little bit. You should say things like, I heard you say, you said, and I believe you want, and respect and reflect their feelings also. You're angry because, you're joyful, I can feel the joy in it. And you want to use empathic responses clearly, supportively, and sincerely. You can't fake this stuff. People will know, and then there goes the trust in a relationship. What I'm hearing is you felt that, you value, you place a high price. So as you see it, your message seems to be. And lastly, you have to have that caring attitude, and you have to have a sincere desire to understand the other person. Can Joe or Jeff, do you have any words of wisdom, whether in a personal relationship, a family relationship, or in your organization, when you've actually put into place some of this empathic listening and it paid off for you? I know you've both been really, this morning have talked about the importance of, not leading the conversation, but letting the other person lead and talk first. But any other times when you sincerely listen to another person and wow, this was a big shocker, I never knew that. I'll give you an example. My daughter, when she went off to college, she was struggling from being away from home. And I tried to listen empathically. And what really was going on is she had actually been downtown in the city in New York, and a subway had gone by and a person had fallen onto the tracks, and she witnessed that. And she was like blown away and so upset. And if I hadn't listened empathically to her, I never would have known about that situation. I just thought she was a kid away from home and a little bit homesick. But there was something really deep back there that listening empathically helped me. And can either one of you want to share an experience maybe you've had from really showing empathy for another person, how it paid off?
I'm not sure if this isn't going to be the same type of experience, I think, but what we try to do when we've got our teams together and are trying to figure out the best way to bring our products to our clients, let's say, we often get tied up in complaining about the restraints that we have on how we do our business. And the first thing that we try to understand is that the rules that we have and the restrictions, there's a whole lot of ways to get to the end, to a solution. And you can have 4 different opinions at the table that are all within the philosophy of your company and are all within the strategies of your company, but they don't sound the same. And the first thing we have to do is recognize that everyone is doing the best that they can to deliver for the organization. And I have had it happen, and I can't give you the specifics because it's a bit delicate, but where one person appeared to be very radical in their angle in what they wanted to do, and it seemed extreme. But once we cracked open the door a little bit and everybody understood that nobody's here to criticize you, just tell us where you came from on that. And this person shared a specific experience, much like your daughter, a specific experience, and okay, so this is why I feel this way. Mm-hmm. And the group as a whole kind of came around and said, okay, that's your angle here. And we came up with like 3 or 4 different potential solutions to that delivery situation, let's say. And I don't know if I'm getting across really the intensity of it, but it had more to do with asking to expand and creating the situation where whatever you say in here is going to be all right. You know, we're all on the same team and we're all driving to the same destiny. Mm-hmm. And once this person cracked the door open a little bit on their feeling or their experience, it put it right into the right focus for us.
Yeah, that's a great example, Jeff.
I hope so. I'm not sure.
Given that person, the opportunity to go farther and to explain where they're coming from, and it gave them the space to work it through. And then the rest of you said, "Oh yeah, well that makes sense, and we can grab a piece of that and run with it." So that is a really good example.
You too often don't realize that every restriction we have came about because of an experience somewhere. Mm-hmm. Somebody made that rule to try to protect the bank.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So let's understand that and then try to find the right way, not around it, but through it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. Joe, how about you? When you use this empathy and empathic listening and it really paid off?
Well, Mary, first of all, thanks for sharing the story about your daughter. I think that was a great example. And I know that stuff can be very powerful. For us, we have these walls at our gyms called the why walls. Like, why are you working out? Because it's kind of stinks a lot of times. Like, it's not easy to go and like, hey, I'm going to be sore for a few days. And like, there's a lot of reasons why not. And it's trying to find the real reasons why and listening to people. And that usually comes from some additional questionings, being empathetic and being someone that they can trust. So if you say, hey, I want to join Synergy to lose weight, and then we usually try to ask why 4 to 6 times to try to get losing weight. Why would you like to lose weight? Well, my doctor said that I need to. Okay, well, why did he say that? Well, he wants me to live a longer life. Well, what will a longer life get you? Well, I get some more time with my family. What are some things you'd like to do with your family? Well, when I get home, I really don't have the energy to play with my kids, and I don't want them growing up seeing their dad with low energy for the rest of their lives until they move out of the house. And through those questionings, you get to a deeper answer, but that only happens if you're listening and really make it part of the process. And so once we get to those, the people write it on their walls, they initial it so people can see other people being vulnerable and writing their why power on the wall in chalk. So they get to be in a position where they can trust in a comfort environment to have those types of discussions.
Yeah, I think you've opened my eyes a little bit how important the relationship is in your business with those trainers and the individuals, that there really does have to be trust, and there has to be powerful and empathic listening to help someone, their health. We're talking about their health and their life here. So it's crucial in your business, and you've really helped me understand that today, Joe. I have one last slide, and let's think about some celebrations here. There's a picture of a church, and this really moves to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And when you've given the other person the opportunity to be understood, then they're more open for listening to you. So this is a picture of a church, and I want to know if anybody knows what happened at this church. And it was in 1998, and this church is located in Belfast, Northern Ireland. So what does it have to do with listening? Anybody in our audience, Amy, willing to raise their hand, jump on that one?
I'm gonna stop share. Actually, just unmute yourself. Jump in the conversation. Don't be shy. Come
It's the
on.
Good Friday Agreement.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gavin, for jumping in here. So there was the Good Friday agreement, and quote, the troubles in Northern Ireland. There was a peace treaty signed at this church, and President Clinton at the time helped broker that deal. And I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to visit the church where this happened and took this picture myself. But that treaty never would have been brokered if someone didn't seek first to understand, then be understood. And we know how fragile sometimes these agreements are. But right now with the pandemic and Brexit, you know, there's been a little bit of trouble again, but it really does come down to the desire to truly understand the other person and work through the process, and then to be understood. So does anybody have other celebrations out there about how when you were finally understood, also the second half of our habit here, and could share a celebration? I think it's so important in our world today. There's so much conflict that we really do have to get back to really listening to each other. Celebrations? Joe, I think you've mentioned that the individual celebrations in your organization, when a trainer truly listens to a client, and then the client is able to, you know, take advice and, you know, here's the way you should be lifting those weights and all of that. So those are little celebrations in your business.
Yes, thank you for that prompt, Mary. Because I was drawing a blank, like what the heck was I talking about last time you asked me that question? Yeah, so it actually goes on. We have like this private members Facebook group where trainers can feel free to like give members shout out. That way they don't have to worry about, you know, other people seeing or commenting. And lately they've been going through like crazy 3 or 4 a day. And there was one this morning about a woman who came in who was walking with a cane and had to do all her exercises seated 2 months ago. And yesterday was the first day she was able to walk in without a cane. So we made sure to like celebrate that and have that conversation with her. That a lot of people think progress is like, well, now I can do 100 pull-ups. Like that's not progress. Being able to like be mobile and increase the quality of your life in a meaningful way is really the purpose of what we do. And so having those celebrations can mean a lot to someone, because they associate like winning in fitness with like these things they see on TV, when winning in fitness is being able to move around, being able to use the staircase in your house, having a 2-floor house when you're older instead of having to buy a ranch because you can't go up the staircase. And those wins, we love to celebrate them for the members.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And like I said,
I had called you much earlier.
He went with he went to press mute, but turned the camera off instead. I see what happened there.
Is that what happened? How about anybody in our audience want to share a celebration when, you know, listening paid off and then the other person gave you the opportunity to listen also? Gavin, are you out there again?
I'm out there, but I'm drawing a blank on an example.
Okay.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
So with the Girl Scouts, I worked there full time, and we did a book club over during the time of the pandemic. It was a virtual one, and we did the 10 effective methods of communication, and it was absolutely fantastic. And it was all about empathic listening, and to put that into practice and to use it and to see that it really works was just really fantastic. So we did multiple different things, and I utilized my kids as like my guinea pig, and then my coworker utilized her husband as her guinea pig, and we did this interactive book club with other volunteers and leaders, and it was really great to see, look, you did this and it worked, and this is so much better than what we've been doing. So it was very effective in that regards.
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie, for sharing.
You're welcome.
What a great example. What a great example of that. Seek first to understand, then be understood. And you moved it from an individual to, you know, a group of people at work. So that's very cool. Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Anyone else? Well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to summarize here for a minute. Stephen says, in addition to physical safety, that the greatest human need is to be understood, to be listened to, truly listened to. So I want everyone today to, you know, you have a situation that's starting to feel a little sticky or difficult, practice empathic listening and see where it gets you. Okay. Amy, anything else you'd like to add this morning?
Well, and we have a few minutes. If you guys have any questions for our CEOs, it doesn't even have to be related to this habit. Or if you had any aha moments or any takeaways for today. I saw some people writing some things down. Just curious, like what resonated with you this morning?
I'm going to request that Nick is in all the audiences because he's always like nodding and smiling over there. I'm going to need Nick in the front row every time I
Yeah.
speak to anyone. I appreciate that, Nick.
I can do that. No, every time you're speaking, I always get something from it. So I was actually just about to say, you know, I did write quite a few things down today. One of the things that really resonated that I thought you guys did a great job of conveying is the sincerity of it. You know, it's great to like learn the principles, have the examples of specific tools and techniques that you can use. Joe, I liked your example from Brene Brown of, you know, here's the story that I'm telling myself, or, you know, what I think I heard you said was, so, you know, having those tools, but then also making sure that, you know, the reason that we do this is to understand the principles at a higher level. So that way, when we actually do it, it's more natural. You know, you're not just like using something that you used in a webinar one time and, oh, you know, this is how I'm going to get someone to be open with me. Like you have to truly come from a place of curiosity and wanting to connect and understand somebody. So you guys all did a great job of conveying that this morning. So thank you for the time and imparting that on all of us here.
I appreciate the kind words, Nick. There's one thing that when you brought that point up, it actually made me think a little bit deeper on it. And something that I forgot to mention today is that so much of listening is nonverbal cues. So it is difficult to repeat back what they say if they don't say it. And that's why I like that the story I'm telling myself, because it gives you that wiggle room to be wrong. You can admit that you're wrong if you're reading the situation wrong, but the nonverbal cues are kind of a challenge of empathic learning. But that's why I like that, having those tools in the toolbox to be sincere about it and not robotic and tactical, but that gives you a place to go with the conversation versus making an assumption and then raising everyone's heart rate in the room.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And thanks, Nick, for the comment about sincerity. There is all of this is out the window if the speaker feels like you're going through motions or something that you learned in a conference somewhere. And we've all been on the other side of that conversation where you're listening to someone and you're like, this is rehearsed. This is, you know, they're checking boxes. And if the sincerity is what builds the trust, and the trust is what builds the relationship.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Nick. Lisa.
I was just going to say what stood out to me and just a good reminder is writing down, listen. And then my immediate thought was the same thing, slow down, because I'm very quick thinker and wanting to get things done. And sometimes I just have to remember to take 3 breaths or, just to breathe. And sometimes I find myself, I'll step away just from my desk, just to kind of like, okay, let me center myself just to, before I prepare so I can be fully attentive and, really listen. So that was a good reminder.
It's very difficult when you're trained to sell. You're trained to do the pre-work on the sell. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the angles I'm going to hit. So you get in front of someone and you just can't wait to launch into it, because it's like, wait till you hear what I got for you. But really, what you have to turn that complete situation around and sit down and go, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your company. Tell me about what you need. And then tailor it that way. But we're all, a lot of us that are in sales are built that way. Wait till you hear what I got.
That's a great point, Jeff. And as the introvert of the group, sometimes when you get in a situation that someone is so excited about selling, it feels like you're just drinking from a fire hose and it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really
We
a
do
good
have
point.
a question in the chat. Michelle, did you want to unmute yourself and ask the question directly?
Sure. So I was wondering, in addition to listening, what are some of the other skills that you think are important for today's leaders and that helped you get to where you are today?
Great question.
Ooh, two-parter. I like that question. On the topic, but a little bit different. I have to be very purposeful about this, because everything we are bombarded with these days is that you don't need to win every conversation. Every conversation is not a win-lose, and it's okay to not care about certain topics. Like if you have your core values and your principles, you need to stay focused on those to be successful. And there was a Warren Buffett story where he was talking with his airplane pilot. Must be nice. But just a brief story where the person said, oh, well, we should buy this jet so I can fly you around in the next 10 years. And Warren Buffett said, well, if I'm doing my job, you're not going to still be my pilot in 10 years. You're going to be somewhere else. What do you want to do in your life? And he had him list 25 things that he wanted to do in life. Circle the top 5. And then he said, what do you think you do with the rest of the list? And the pilot said, well, these are things I can do like on the weekend, my hobbies and things like that. And he said, absolutely not. Those other ones are things you must never do, because they're going to take your focus off your core purpose. So if you're allowing yourself to go down all these different paths and chase every conversation and every argument that's out there, try to jump in with it, you're really not going to be able to fulfill what you really want to fulfill. And that's a tough realization to say, all right, it's like we're trained, we want to be caring people and we should be caring and kind to each other, but you don't need to care about every argument or everything, because then it will kind of devalue what you can do and what you can bring to the table in the long run.
So Joe, that's a great example when we talked in habit 3, put first things first. Where do your first things come from? They come from your values, your principles, and your character. And those are the top 5 things, as Buffett said, that you focus on, and don't let the other stuff distract you. Stay true to your principles and values so those first things stay first.
As a simple tactic, I used to just gloss over like mission statements and core values when I was younger, because they felt a little fluffy and forced to me.
Mm-hmm.
But once you find those ones that really fit, it's good to have your own personal ones. We have our family ones that our family sits down in the week. We run our family more purposefully than we run our company, which is a realization that I had to have after spending so much time at work and so much effort going there. But have those core values, and it gives you a lens to make these decisions through. So you're not making every decision like it's a fresh one-off. Now you have this framework of what's important to you as a person and what you can focus on, and that can really move mountains for you in your life.
That also assists you in driving things within the company where there's more than one of you in the room.
Sure.
Because it's the frame, it's the guide rails I was talking about.
Right.
Let's go back to what you're saying, and how does that align with the mission of this organization?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you recognize by listening that there's three different ways, 3 different answers to the same question, all within the same mission. Mm-hmm. So let's find the one that we think's most actionable.
Jeff, would you add any other skills to the list besides the listening, in addition to that helped you get to where you are today in a leadership role?
Well, I'm not sure I can add a lot to Joe. I thought that was an outstanding response. I think the ability to set the priorities and show and demonstrate the priorities of the mission of your, they recognize that as the leader of the organization, eyes are on you. You're the thermostat. If you're getting excited about something, the organization's going to get excited about something. If you're calm about it, they're likely to be a little more calm, maybe a little more. But recognize your role and the trust that's placed in you. But drive the priorities of the organization. They'll very often be the same personal ones that Joe referred to: character and trust and honesty, but be a reflection of that, let's say.
Thank you so much.
don't
Those are
wanna-
excellent responses.
Thank you. There's actually something that popped in my head with what Jeff was just saying. I was down at this mentorship meeting that I help run with gym owners from around the country, and the answers to all their problems were about the same. Where they'd come up with like, "Hey, I have this situation. Okay, well, what are your core values?" And then let's answer it based on that. What's your system for answering this question? Everyone is just, all right, well, what should you do? Like, before you get into decision, you should have that framework so it's not so overwhelming. And I see so many people just the last couple of days feel so overwhelmed by these decisions, and all they have to do is look at their core value and make the decision, whether it's a tough choice or not, but that's what they're there for.
All right, we have another minute. Any other questions, reflections, takeaways, anything resonating with you today?
Amy, I will just kind of throw an invitation out there to Joe Hashi to join us for Habit 6. Habit 6 is synergy. And Joe, you must have strong feelings about it. So I want to see you on the call next month.
As long as t-shirts are allowed.
They are.
That's my one rule for everything. Just kidding.
So Joe, why did you name your company that?
Because I played sports through college and everything, and I always had a strong feeling towards that that together we can achieve more than we can as individuals. So that's how we define it. And perhaps looking back, maybe I would have called it something else because people have a tough time spelling it for like SEO and stuff and those tactical business things. But it's always spoken to me that through a strong team, we can make something great. Me as an individual might be able to train 10 people, but if we throw in Carly, I think she's our marketing manager, our different trainers, maybe we can help 1,000 people. And so how do you get from taking 5 people that can train 10, put them together, and now you're training 1,000 because they have those qualities that they can build off of. And now you take 10 to 20 to 30 because you're helping each other out and growing something special.
Well, thanks, Joe. You've just laid a great foundation for next month's Habit. So I appreciate
You hooked me in. You got me on you recorded this that I have to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, this was great. I would absolutely be my honor to be listening to that conversation.
Okay. And I want to thank Jeff also for your valuable contributions this morning. You two have been wonderful, and I hope our participants can walk away with something from the two of you and the legacy that you're leaving here in our community. So thank you, both of you.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much,
so
Mary,
much,
Amy, Jeff.
to Joe and Jeff. Our next Inside the C-Suite, always the first Thursday of the month, which I believe takes us to Thursday, August 5th. Synergy is
Synergy.
synergy. Yes, is that?
See, that's why you
habit.
can't name your company that.
I know. Why? Putting Joe in the synergy habit. I don't know. We do have Harvey Stenger and Kevin Drum with SUNY Broome and Binghamton University. So we're excited to hear from them next month. And we'll be getting the recording out to everyone if you'd like to share within your networks. And thank you so much for joining us today. Have a
Thanks.
great day, everyone.
Thank you so
Thanks
much,
very
everyone.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.